maybe people who feel guilty about what they've done in the past, or what they could have done, or what they should have done, and have that whole story like, oh, I should have done this, or oh, I should have done that, and they spin their wheels for years on end. But there's a guilt is so destructive in the fact that it's you against you. Like, you can't change anything, and if you can't, get over that and forgive yourself, you're just going to be on a hamster wheel to nowhere. And ultimately, guilt is probably such a destructive one. But I think for myself, I was always looking at, like, I just looked at and analyzed, my life, or where I was going. It could be relationships, it could be work, it could be fitness, it could be, like, some of the pillars of what we look for in life. We all got to play the health game, really, or we're gonna have to, pay the price. Like, obviously the money game we have to play, and relationships we have to play. They're like three things we have to get, because we always have to, get on with people, and that. So, and I looked at those, and I was really kind of, lowered, and I put myself in, pretty a low category in most of those, to be quite honest with you. So I was like, what I need, these are the three things I have to master. I have to master these, because otherwise, they're going to own me, and I'm not going to get anywhere. So those are really the sort of really started how I started to work, and yeah, I just became to a point where I wanted to. As I said before, you go to the Adelphi Temple, know thyself. It's that is the journey. It's journey within. And I think, for my life, everything up until that moment, everything was outside of me. It was the relationships, it was the cars, it was the money, it was the jobs, it was the clothes, it was the trainers, it was everything. I was looking for everything outside of me to make me feel better, and none of it worked. It all just patched over, really basically my, who I was as a person. And so it was only really when I actually started saying, the understanding that the journey is always in, and you have to go and find who you are. And one of the biggest things I did, because I had no self-love really for myself. Like, I never really, I even struggled to say that I loved other people. And so one of the biggest things I did is I wrote 25 things which I loved about myself, and I just read them in the mirror all the time, because that opens up your soul.
Because that is something that is like, self-love is such a great tool. And these guys were writing to me, and they were like, "You're the first person I've told." And I thought, it's terrifying that, I remember, where was that I read? It was something like 74% of men admitted they didn't have a best friend, or they didn't have a close enough friend that they could go, I fucked up, or I'm struggling with this. I've felt suicidal. I felt down, and and I was thinking I could never admit some of the intrusive thoughts that go in my head, like the horrible shit that comes. And I was thinking, I can't say that. People have, like, fucking beat me up or something, And we feel alone, don't we? We feel like we're completely isolated from everything. It, it's a horrible thing. And we're told to be strong and macho and masculine and deal with your shit, and you just be the boss of everything. And it's so stupid. I love how you talk about not just the past, but you look at the concept of future self. You go, well, how you can deal with the future version of yourself. Could you go into a little bit about that? Like, how do you use the concept of future self to help the present self deal with the shit from the past?
Yeah, and it's great